Up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How you feeling today, brother?
Glad to be home. It's the calm before the porch, my friend.
The calm before the porch. Well, at least your airport of choice is not the meltdown of the civilized world right now, like mine is. I have to book. I was literally going through flights, and they're like, it's like I'm flying again in like a week. And they're like, it's going to be bad for another week. I'm like, okay, so then I can't fly out of Newark. And then now I got to book flights for our next trip after that. And I'm like, do I take government people at their word that it'll be fixed in a week? Like the government told me we needed 15 days to slow the spread. And then we were in lockdowns for a year and a half. So I'm not.
It's amazing how much money there is in the airport business, and that I guess since government doesn't like profits, they're okay with just disrupting an entire industry. I assume the FAA positions are actually government staffed and they're not staffed by the airlines. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, those are government employees. Yeah. No, it's a government screw up. And of course, air travel is like one of the most highly regulated industries. I mean, a lot's made about how like Ronald Reagan like deregulated to some degree, I think, the airlines, but there's still like a crazy regulated, industry. And once you get to like that level of regulation, it's basically all government jobs anyway. You know what I mean? Like maybe not officially, but it's all like just the worst. The worst. I find everything about the airport's so ridiculous.
I've been flying now. I take like 40 flights a year, maybe more. I take a lot of flights. I think I've only first noticed that there's actually a security fee on your flight ticket, and it's not cheap. Like if you just, I think it might be a $35 fee. That's $15 more than a porch tour ticket. And what, for them to hold you up and touch your underwear? It's kind of outrageous that it costs them that much to facilitate long security lines. I got to check the price tag on that. I don't know if it ranges differently on flights.
Yeah, maybe I'm not sure. But yeah, I have noticed that before. But it's also just like everything. Do you remember there was the thing? Wait, I forget the exact details of this, but this was years ago, like 15 years ago or something like that. But they did like, they published like the results of the TSA's tests. Like they have these third parties go in and just they sneak in like fake explosives, and they missed 80% of them. Like for all that shit that we go through, they still like don't get the stuff.
I don't even know if that's possible just with the way that they harass me in my bags. Maybe it's just my dumb face.
It probably is your dumb face. That's the reason for most of my problems, is your dumb face. Just being too closely associated with it.
I've traveled with this same shotgun microphone for also 40 flights or something. And I don't remember the airport, but in one airport, they pulled me over for it. And the guy was so excited. He really thought he found a gun. And then when he opened it up and he double checked it, and then he finally pulled it out, and then he had to look at me. It's just a dumb government employee. So all disappointed, like, so what was this thing? It's a microphone, you fucking retard.
Well, it's also, I mean, I'm not trying to be.
He really thought he had something.
Look, I'm not trying to be a dick, but like there are different levels of government employees, and whatever the TSA is, you're just like, you might be better suited to work at Wendy's. I think might be like literally the people who are working at the TSA were applying to Wendy's and the TSA, and they got the TSA job. They're also just, it's one of the things that I just, look, I mean, this is like, the essence of like libertarianism 101 type stuff. But there is something where it's the problem with government in a nutshell, right? Is that it's based on force. So it's not like, you are, every interaction you have with the government is like, there's this threat of force behind it, and we all know that on some level. And so like in any other setting, like if you go to a business, you're the customer. Like I'm not saying there's not some example where someone was like rude to you in a business, but generally speaking, when you go into any type of voluntary market action, the customer is kind of king. People are nice to you. They'll try to help you find something. They're trying to get your business. That's the whole model here, is that we want you to shop with us. Whenever it comes to something like that, it's like, you're essentially the boss when you walk into a store. But when you walk into anything with the government, they're just the boss. They're a monopoly that's based off force. You have no choice. And so it just breeds this thing where, like, you know, if you walk into the Apple store, it's like, hey, I'm a customer here. I need this. And they're like, okay, let me get that for you. But when you walk into the DMV, it's just like, wait on the long line that makes no sense to have you wait on. You know, like everything's just like, and with the TSA, it's like, it's all of that, plus they're the most retarded people you'll ever meet in your life. And no, I did get the other day recognized by a TSA agent who said he's a huge fan. So if you're listening, not you. But also, if you're listening, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about because you work with all these people. But it'll just be things like, literally, like, even they're just dicks. They're fucking, oh my God, dude. I mean, like, I got into a thing with the TSA, which literally almost went bad because like, they're a dick to me all the time, but like, I fly all the time and I'm just trying to keep it moving. But I was flying with my wife and one of them was real snappy to her. And then I started talking shit back to him. And then I could take that to me, but you don't fucking talk to my wife that way. And I said some pretty mean things.
I always like it when sometimes they have the energy like they're about to miss a flight. And it's like, relax. You can process this slower. You don't have to yell at us. We're not checking into prison. It's not that big of a deal. It's not your problem if someone misses a flight. Relax.
Yeah, well, they'll be rude to you when you ask the most reasonable question.
Oh, yeah, because you know what's funny? I'm in every airport, and they all operate differently. So sometimes I literally walk up to the thing. I'm like, hey, is laptop coming out of the bag? And they're like, why would you ask me that? Not going out of the keep it in the bag. Everything goes on there. You're like, relax. I was just asking the question. You're one airport. There's 100 of these across the country. They all have a different policy.
Well, also, I've had that happen when it's the same airport with a different policy.
Yeah.
I've literally had that happen where I'm like, we got to take laptops out, and they're like, no, what do you? And I go, oh, okay, well, we did 2 weeks ago right here, so it's a pretty reasonable thing for me to ask. But yeah, anyway, I'm just literally getting myself angry thinking about that TSA person being rude to my wife. Oh, I was pretty vicious in response to him, though. I said mean things. Anyway, okay, let's get into some stuff that's not just us bitching about flying. By the way, the reason we fly is to come see you good people, and we will be. I got a busy month coming up. I guess I'm always kind of busy these days, but we should let everybody know. Well, first of all, I'm doing another big podcast that I think you guys will be excited about in a few days here. So that should be out soon. And then the next one we got together is Appleton, Wisconsin. Very excited to do that. Salt Lake City, Denver, Cleveland, Providence, Tacoma, Spokane, a whole bunch of dates coming up. ComicDaveSmith.com for those ticket links. And then also, I haven't mentioned it in a while. It's sold out, so you can't come. But I think, I got to check. I don't know if it'll be live streamed or not. But I'm debating at the Soho Forum. That is my next debate. It's going to be an Oxford style debate on how libertarians ought to feel about immigration. I have been. It's coming up in a few weeks here. It's May 20 something. And it just was like occurring to me today that I was like, I should probably start thinking about that. Should probably put my argument together here. But I am, I've had so much other stuff going on that I've been focused on. But I am excited for this because it's, I've done a lot of debates and different styles of debates, like informal debates where it's just like two people on a podcast arguing an issue. And then I've done the slightly more formal ones where like there's a moderator and then there's two people arguing about an issue. And then I've done a couple of like Oxford style debates, and there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But there is something about an Oxford style debate where it's a little bit cleaner. You get to give your opening statement and then give your rebuttal, and then you have a little period to mix it up, and then you give a closing statement, and then people are going to vote on it and vote on before and after, and you see how many people you could change. And it's kind of it has been one of my areas of focus for a while now, has been trying to get libertarians good on this issue. And I don't know, this is a good opportunity for me, I think, because first off, it's at Gene Epstein's Soho Forum, which is like an amazing debate series there, and it's it's kind of it's backed by Reason magazine, and it's become kind of like known in the libertarian world as like the kind of the libertarian debate series. And then I'm debating like Cato's #1 immigration specialist there. So it's a very good opportunity for me to like lay out the case for why libertarians ought to support immigration restrictions. So I'm excited for the opportunity for that. And I believe you're gonna do stand up there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Rob Bernstein will be there.
Some immigration jokes. Got a couple ideas. Hopefully I'll tune them up over Florida weekend.
There you go. And then I think we're doing like I think Gene is organizing some type of after party type thing too. So if you are there, I hope for those of you who have already bought tickets, it'll be that should be a fun time. The Soho Forum for a long time was like my home. I think I'm, as Gene likes to mention, I believe I hold the distinct honor of being the only person who has I've done stand-up opening for the debates many times, and I've also debated and moderated. So I've done everything at that series. And I used to, back when I had less wives and babies, I used to be at every single one of the Soho forums because I just love going there and hanging out. It's like always a great group of people and really interesting debates and all of that. By the way, when I say less wives and babies, I only have the one wife. I haven't gotten any more wives, but I've gotten more babies. But anyway, so it's kind of like a homecoming type thing, and then I get to kind of lay out my case for why open borders are insane and libertarians should oppose them. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And at some point, I'll start thinking about what I'm going to say. It'll be good by the time I get there. Don't you worry. Okay. Anyway, let's jump into this. This was a topic that I found kind of interesting, and for a couple of reasons. It hits on obviously the war in Ukraine, which is something we've spent a lot of time talking about over the years, and it also kind of hit on a major theme that I've been talking and tweeting a lot about. So let's play this clip. This is from yesterday. Donald Trump was taking questions at the White House, and I thought actually one of the better questions that I have heard asked of Donald Trump since he's been back in the White House was asked of him. So let's play that clip.
2.5 years ago, the Nord Stream pipeline blew up. Yeah. And despite what people like John Brennan and all the talk said, you were one person who said Russia probably did not blow up its own pipeline.
Yeah, if you can believe, they said Russia blew it up. Yeah.
And so I'm wondering now that you're president, if you would consider launching a formal investigation into what happened there and who actually did blow it up.
Well, probably if I asked certain people, I'd be able to tell you without having to waste a lot of money on an investigation. But I think a lot of people know who blew it up. But I was the one that blew it up originally because I wouldn't let it be built. And then when Biden got in, he allowed it to be built.
All right. Can you just pause it for a second here?
It's very
okay. So part of the reason why I found this so fascinating, right, is that first of all, it's a great question. Now, it's one I don't know that I would have thought, huh?
Props to Tyler Durden of Zero Hedge.
Is that who asked the question? Was it a Zero Hedge guy?
We actually know who it was, but Zero Hedge has a guy in the room now who got that.
Oh, right. Yes. Oh, okay. That's funny. I didn't even realize that I know who this is asking a question. So give him credit. Excellent question. I don't know that I would have even thought that one. I mean, I could think of some pretty good questions for Trump, but I don't know that I would have thought of that one, but a really good question. And I think in a way it really got to the heart of one of the things that, me and you have talked about, like that's just been, utterly disappointing about this administration. But it's like, oh yeah, that's right. The goddamn government commits so many crimes. I almost forget about really major ones. Like it was just when you asked me to rattle off the crimes, I'm like, okay, well, they lied us into several wars and they instituted totalitarian lockdowns. They covered up a giant pedophile ring. They framed the president for treason. And then you're like, oh yeah, and the biggest act of environmental terrorism in human history. That's right. There's that other one that they did. And then literally this happens 2.5 years ago. The Nord Stream pipeline gets blown up. Joe Biden is on record having threatened to destroy the pipeline. It's clearly got the West's fingerprints all over it. And they tried to tell you that Vladimir Putin blew up his own pipeline, which he built, and he can just turn off. Like, he doesn't have to blow it up. Blowing it up, just all it does is not give him the option to turn it back on. And so this question is asked. And then, look, I mean, what do you get from Donald Trump here? He asked the question, are you going to launch an investigation? And Donald Trump goes, well, I wouldn't even need to launch an investigation. I could probably just tell some people and then tell you. A lot of people know. A lot of people know who did it. Translation, no. There won't be an investigation. Donald Trump, like, what is this? A lot of people know. I could just ask them and then tell them. It's, yeah, could you do that? Would you mind? Like, can we do that right now? Can you call? Do you have your cell phone on you? Can you call them right now and ask them how, like, why? It's so funny. The level of, like, you know, like, if you think about all the projection from the corporate media, who is like, if Donald Trump gets in there, he might prosecute his political opponents, and, you know, that while they were doing the same thing to him, and how much was made over him having that lock her up chant back in 2016. But then you sit, like, the reality, it's just unbelievable. It's like, here's the funhouse mirror version, and then the reality is them going like, hey, how about this very specific blatant crime that was committed by the previous administration, who supposedly's guts you hate? You want to tell us about that? And it's like, no interest. And then, of course, he pivots into this nonsense about how he was really the one who blew it up, as if that's a good thing, because he got them to stop, he got Germany and Russia to stop
They should
trading.
have blown it up, but I would have blown it up better. Believe me.
It's also like, you know, it's such a weird, the Nord Stream pipeline's a particularly interesting issue, because it exposes, like, how people think about the world. And, you know, there is what's his name, the Stratford guy, I think his name is Freeman, who he was the head of Stratford for a while, but he basically what he said, which is kind of an interesting theory, is that he was like, the entire motivation for US foreign policy post World War II was to always keep the Germans, it was always like to keep the Russians out and to keep the Germans down. And that essentially, like, the big fear from the American empire is like that Germany and Russia would get together. Like, if they, you know, like, this was like obviously the big fear right before World War II was that, oh my God, what if Stalin and Hitler, you know, like, which is kind of interesting. Like, there's a lot of interesting nuggets about World War II. Like Hitler had a real affinity for the British Empire earlier in his life. Obviously, they ended up going to war, but he had, like, a lot of respect for the British Empire. He had a deal worked out with Stalin at one point, and, like, you have like imperialist Britain, capitalist America, communist Russia, and fascist Germany. And it's not so clear where the partnerships would end up. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like such a given that the capitalists and the communists ought to be friends. And you could make a lot of arguments that fascism is a lot closer to the system of communism than capitalism is. And anyway, so it's just, it's like, you could see where, okay, the team of, you know, Britain, US, and Russia ends up defeating the Nazis and their allies, Italy and Japan and them. But, like, oh my God, if Hitler and Stalin had gotten together, who's to say who wins that? You know what I mean? Like, it's not a given. And basically what Freeman was arguing was that, like, there is the concern from the American empire was, like, if you ever combined the natural resources and the human capital, like the sheer size of Russia and number of people, with, like, German ingenuity, this could pose a real threat to the, you know, like, he would say it in nicer words, like, but this could pose a threat to the rules-based international order, or whatever, you know, to global hegemony, whatever term they use instead of empire, which just means empire with different words. But So it's interesting. Like, I'm not sure this is exactly right, but it's an interesting way to look at things. And that, I know for sure, like, there was if you go read, because there's like notes from the meetings that have been declassified, but there were what's called the 2+4 meetings, and then there were like some subsequent meetings after that, like that where the minutes to the meetings have been declassified. And these are the meetings that were taking place from like 1989, 1990, 1991. So like as the Soviet Union is about to collapse, and during the meetings, like they're not exactly like certain that the Soviet Union is about to collapse, but they're talking about allowing German reunification and pulling back. And there's even talk, I think, of dissolving the Warsaw Pact, and like so there's like all these so while this is happening, and you can read this, like the West is trying to get German reunification. And then a big topic of debate is about NATO expansion. And this is where the not 1 inch to the east promise, where all those promises are made. And one of the things they're talking about is like, okay, so at the time, right, during the height of the Cold War, or I shouldn't say the height, but during the Cold War, I guess this would be not the height, but the end. But so at this time, right, the line was drawn right down the middle of Germany. It was down the Elbe River. So the West Germany is with the West, and East Germany is with the East. And they're talking about allowing German reunification. The Berlin Wall had just come down like the previous year. And while they're talking about it, kind of like the Russian beef is like, okay, but like, what about NATO now? Because if we reunify Germany, is NATO now moving east? And this is where the original, like, not 1 inch east. And they were saying even let Germany be reunified, but NATO military hardware won't move beyond the Elbe River. Like, we'll still draw the line militarily in the same place. Now, ultimately, even by the end, I think the Russians even accepted that, like, that doesn't make any sense. And like, how are you going to reunify Germany, but only the west half of it has NATO protection and not the eastern half of it? And anyway, one of the things that's interesting in that, if you read through the notes of the meeting, is that what they do in a sense to kind of get the Russians to fold and go like, okay, fine, like have Germany under NATO's umbrella, is that they keep like propose, like they float out the idea. They go, or maybe Germany could just be independent. Like maybe we could just have an independent Germany. And then that like sends shivers down everyone. Like the Russians are like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. We don't like that. And so there is this interesting thing where like, we may not think of it that way. World War II seems like kind of ancient history, but to a lot of powerful people, and particularly this is in, 1990. So this is, it's 50 years or 45 years later, but they still, I mean, this war, 60 million people died in World War II. I think it was 30 or 40 million of them died in Eastern Europe in the war between Russia and Germany. And so my point is that there's a lot of people are freaked out over the prospect of there being this pipeline of like Russia and Germany becoming allies and doing business together and all of this. And the concern, I think, is that could threaten U.S. dominance. And Donald Trump always fell right into that. And that's why he's bragging about, oh, yeah, I was the one who got them to stop being friends. But it's always amazing to me. I remember when I debated at Princeton University, it was the last Oxford-style debate I did. I debated Josh Hammer. And one of the points he was making was like bragging about the Abraham Accords and how successful Donald Trump was for working them out. And I just kind of made the point, I go, it's a little bit weird for you to brag about the Abraham Accords right now. Because like, I don't know if you've paid attention to the Middle East over the last couple of years. It's not going great. And so it's got, now I'm not saying that like causation isn't correlation or whatever, but like it is a little bit strange the example I used in the debate was, I said it would be like you're bragging about how you and your wife saw the best couples therapist. Like, this guy is the best. It was unbelievable. Like, the best thing we ever did. And we go, oh, so things are going a lot better for you guys now? And they're like, no, we got divorced. Horrible breakup. But man, that couples counseling was so great. It's like, well, it didn't seem to work out that well. And so it's funny that even in hindsight, Donald Trump can't even like fathom. And maybe it wasn't a good idea. Maybe we would have been way better off if Russia was more integrated with Europe. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, why? It's just crazy. And I think certainly from my perspective, I go, okay, well, look, first off, I don't care about the American empire, because we're not supposed to be an empire anyway. We're supposed to be a republic. And it's been nothing but a disaster for the American people that we've been an empire, not to mention for the countries that we dominate. But I just look at it on a human level and I go, okay, if the worst thing that ever happened in the history of the world was when Germany and Russia went to war, then it seems pretty great that they'd be friends. And of course, America comes in to go, no, let's ruin that. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is American Financing. Prices for the last few years have been and continue to be high, and most people, unfortunately, have to reach for credit cards to cover bills. Credit card debt has reached an all-time high, and it's trapping Americans. This is where American Financing comes in. They can help homeowners pay off high-interest debt by using their home's equity. American Financing is a family-owned mortgage lender that's been around for 25 years. Their mortgage consultants are salary-based, so there's no incentive for them to put you in a loan that doesn't make sense. Their customers save an average of $800 a month when they call and let American Financing help them. You may be able to close in as little as 10 days, and you may be able to delay up to 2 mortgage payments, creating more savings up front. Call them today at 866-886-2026. That's 866-886-2026 or americanfinancing.net/Dave. On average, people just like you are saving $800 a month. Plus, they may close your loan in as little as 10 days, and you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you a cushion in uncertain times. Once again, call today, 866-886-2026, 866-886-2026, or visit them online at americanfinancing.net/Dave. All right, let's get back into the show. So anyway, it's just all of it is, I found this question to be interesting. I found Trump's answer to be, terrible and kind of, I don't know, it illustrates something about, first off, how he still gets everything wrong about what led up to the war. And also just the more basic point that I've been harping on for a long time, that me and you have talked about for a while, Rob, that is just like, look, like the crimes that the government has committed are so profound. And you got all these people, Tulsi Gabbard and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump himself, who have been making a living calling out these crimes, making their name off calling out these crimes. I mean, Donald Trump had a name, but you know what I'm saying. Even in the question here, Liam points out that it's like, yeah, you're the guy. You're the guy who called it out. Hey, I remember 2.5 years ago when this happened, and I remember you calling out that this was all bullshit, and yet all of you guys are in power now, and there's just no move. There's no move being made. By the way, Rob, I posted this something to this effect earlier on Twitter today, and I was assured by many Trump supporters, you got to give it time, dude. Got to be patient. All these guys are going to be brought to justice. And it's just like, how? I don't know. At what point are you just like, no, they're not. Sorry, I wish they were, but none of that's going to happen.
You're just not a believer, Dave.
That is the problem, I suppose. Well, and that is true. I am not a believer. I do not believe it at all.
It's a tough pitch for why Russia, in a pre-Ukraine environment, isn't allowed to sell natural gas directly to Germany. Other than that you're representing American oil interests, or you think you got to keep down every single nation so that they can't acquire wealth. It's just a tough pitch, other than mercantilism. That I don't understand how else you kind of justify not letting other countries freely trade with each other.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And also just that, on top of that, like Germany had embraced all of these insane climate policies. So I think they got rid of like a whole bunch of their like nuclear power, maybe all of it. I don't remember. I remember reading about this years ago, but it was crazy. And then it's like, oh, here comes Vladimir Putin. Like, I'll sell you some natural gas at a very reasonable price. And we're like, oh, so that you mean that would be like really great for the people of Russia and the people of Germany. And then our role is to come in here and be like, no, stay poorer. Don't get richer. It's just horrible on every level. All right, you want to move on? I kind of almost reluctantly, but I do want to talk a little bit about this Dave Portnoy story, because I just find it fascinating, and the reaction to it is crazy. So if you guys don't know, which I don't know that much about Dave Portnoy, I kind of tend to like him. I don't really know, that much. Like, I don't really watch his content that much. I'm just too busy for like sports content. I've just got too much work to do, and got little kids and a wife who I try to hang out with every now and then. But I did grow up like a big sports fan, and I still am. I watched the Knicks game the other night. Amazing. We beat the Celtics. But he does like, he's like a sports company, and they do like, it's like dude stuff, I think, like he does like pizza rankings. Like, he'll go to all the best pizza places in the country and rank their pizza, and then they cover like the football games and the shit like that. And that's like, even though I don't like really do that anymore, that's like kind of my type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, when I was 20, I was watching everything on ESPN. If I were 20 today, I'd probably be a huge Barstool Sports fan. And ranking pizza seems right up your alley, Rob. It seems like you were a couple zigs when you zagged away from ending up there rather than here. But do you know the Barstool guys at all? Like, do you ever watch any other stuff?
I think he's great. I don't follow everything. I certainly don't agree with all of his political opinions, but just as a radio guy, he's great. Every once in a while I end up on a wormhole of watching his pizza reviews. Every once in a while he pops up on the news. He's funny. He's a great personality. That's not an endorsement of everything he says or does, nor do I watch all of it. But more often than not, when he comes across my feed, I'm like, oh, look, Dave Portnoy, and it's entertaining. Yeah,
that's kind of how I've felt about him too. And then I think, I think there was this dynamic that happened to a lot of people. I'm speaking on my ass a little bit here because I don't really like follow him that closely. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, essentially what happened to him is what happened to a lot of people is over the years of like woke insanity. Like, he was kind of like, oh, I'm not like political. I just want to like be over here and be a dude. And then like the woke people were like, well, that's actually a political statement to be a dude. And so you're our enemy. And then they, they almost like started attacking him about everything. And then he's a dude, so he's not a pussy. You know what I mean? So like once they started attacking him, it was like, no, fuck you, and started like battling with the woke people.
I love hey, I'm wealthy and it's awesome, and I built this company from scratch, and that's awesome. I love that part of his thing, and he's such a winner. He got some massive payout from that gambling company, and then bought back Barstool for like $1. And now he has full ownership plus all that money that he received on the buyout. Just winner shit.
Yeah. Can't argue with any of that. So anyway. Look, so I'm not coming at this as a guy who like doesn't like Dave Portnoy. You know what I'm saying? Like, that it's just that I do see, I don't know. I think there's like an inability that some people have of how to grapple with like the Jew hating stuff that they don't like. And I understand why they don't like it. I don't like it either. But I think ironically, I suppose, that a lot of the people who really prioritize like shutting down the Jew hatred, like we gotta handle this problem that people are saying mean shit about Jews. They go about it all wrong. And ironically, they end up being the ones who are really feeding that fire. Like, if you think this is a problem, you're making the problem much worse. so I guess what happened was he had some event at like a bar that he owns, doing some sports thing there, and someone showed up with a "fuck the Jews" sign. That's the story. Okay, so here was Dave Portnoy's. I guess pictures were taken and that went up on social media, and it was a bit of a scandal. And then this was his video the next day. I believe he called this an emergency press conference. Let's play.
All right, emergency press conference time.
There you go.
So I'm getting ready to go to the Met Gala, and all of a sudden my phone, the last hour or two, my phone's fucking blowing up. Our bar in Philadelphia, Barstool Sampson Street, usually a great fucking bar. You know, bottle service, people buy drinks. You get a sign. There was a sign yesterday that said, "Fuck the Jews." I've been shaking. I've been so fucking mad for the last 2 hours. Like, I instantly got on. This is why the emergency press conference was late, because I was so over the top. It's like, I'm going to fucking make it my life fucking mission to ruin these people. Like,
Okay, just pause it right here.
I'm never ending.
Okay, so I remember when I was a kid. So when I was a little kid, like I was around, I think I was 5, maybe 6, 5 or 6. And I moved, we moved to this, to a block that was kind of like a tough block. And I wasn't a tough kid at that age. I had never really been, and my parents had already been divorced for years. I didn't really have like a father who was like teaching me how to be a man. I'm noticing that now as I'm doing that with a young boy. I go, oh yeah, that's important. And so we moved to this block. It was like a really tough block. And I used to get like really viciously fucking bullied. And it was like these 12 and 13-year-olds who used to do it. And I was going to this public school, which was a pretty, like, I'm not like trying to paint a picture like I was like had some like horrible childhood or something, but it was tough. It was Brooklyn in the 80s, and there were fist fights, and there were like these 12-year-olds used to fuck us up. And man, when you're 6, a 12-year-old is like a god. I mean, it's just impossible to even imagine that you could stand up to them. And I was at this school. There were a lot of fist fights at school and stuff. And I remember just literally, I had a single mom. I'm not blaming her at all. She just didn't know, you know, this is not really the type of thing a mom can help you with. And I just had to figure it out. And eventually I figured it out and kind of figured it out like, oh, you can't be a pussy. You have to fight. Like that's it. It's like, it sucks, but there's a very basic realization that a lot of men have when they're boys, that it's like, and I just had to figure it out myself, that it was like, oh, getting beat up is not as bad as just getting humiliated. Like, it sucks, but you're also kids. They're not like, it wasn't an environment. I'm not like getting curb stomped here. You know what I mean? I'm going to get like punched in the stomach. It's like, it's not like, anyway, so I kind of figured out how to deal with bullies. So, okay, later in life, this is like much later in life, I think I was in the 5th grade or maybe the 6th grade. And then I went to like a very soft private school. So like I went to public school and then I went to private school. By the way, best, you want to make a future libertarian, send someone to public school and private school. Let them see the difference between the government and the market. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I remember they brought in, this was like at the very beginning of like anti-bullying campaigns, and they brought in this chick, like a school psychologist or something like that, that gave us a talk on how to deal with bullies. And one of the things they said was that you're supposed to start with an I statement and tell them how their actions are making you feel. And you'd be like, I feel disrespected when you speak to me this way. And I remember just sitting there and being like, yo, I figured out many, many years ago that is completely wrong. Like, that is, if somebody is bullying you, the last thing in the world you would ever want to do is let them know that it's working. That's why they're doing it. Like, you can't, that's the fucking incentive for them doing it to begin with. And likewise, in this situation, it's just like, it's crazy to me to like, we're grown adults sitting here and you're like, oh, are you still, so I figured this out at 5. You haven't, to sit here and go, I was literally shaking because I'm so angry about this and this is so wrong. It's like, dude, that's the point. What do you think someone went to a bar in a public event with a fuck the Jews sign for? To blend into the crowd? Or do you think maybe they were trying to trigger a reaction out of you? So how counterproductive is it to just give them this reaction? Like so now this has always been the dynamic, right? And it's like, it's so strange that it's so hard for people to figure this out, right? But since the rise of even like the alt-right and back in like 2016 or any of that shit, it's like, dude, this guy, I mean, I don't know anything about the guy who is holding the sign. I don't know if he's been revealed online or whatever, but this guy is presumably no one, right? He's some dude.
Lady.
Oh, was it? Maybe you're right. I don't know.
But maybe Natalie, you're a lesbian. You're good at tracking down hot chicks.
Natalie, you could just what's coming from inside you right now? What do you feel? Do you know? Can you see her? But you're like, look, presumably whoever this person is, it's like they go there to trigger this reaction. And now look what you hand them. They get to have Dave Portnoy saying he's literally shaking. Like, do you not get the power play here? You know, like, this has always been the thing now that like some 15-year-old on the internet can get an editor at the New York Times or the owner of the Comedy Cellar or whoever to be like freaking out and go, it's like, yes, just recognize this. Take away, it was a couple. Okay. So, but if you recognize this, you can immediately take away the energy source and go like, okay, whatever. You're like, I don't know. What's the appropriate response to this, Rob? I would say if it's my bar and someone comes in and holds up a fuck the Jews sign, I'd probably have someone from the bar walk over to them and be like, guys, you got to leave if you have that sign here. You know, can't do that. You want to put the sign away or you want to head out somewhere else, guys? You know, it's like could be handled like that. Like that's it. And also like, we gotta stop. And this is, I mean, you can weigh in here, Rob, too. But as me and you have been saying for many years, we've got to stop being snowflakes here, dude. Like, I don't like Jew hatred any more than anybody else does. You know, why would I? It's like against me and my group. It's against my friends and my family. And, you know, okay, I don't like that. But like, what are we? Are we fucking pink-haired 20-year-olds on a college campus somewhere? No, nothing has happened to anybody. No, like, it's like, okay. And I really do. The reason I bring up that childhood story, because I really do think like my childhood, for whatever, like informs the way I view a lot of this, or maybe it's just the way I'm wired or the way I view things. But it's like, I just think it's such a bad idea to ever turn it, to start catastrophizing like very non-big deals. Like, don't do that. It's like if we didn't learn anything from the rise and fall of wokeism, it's like, don't do that. You don't like, if you want people to actually be persuaded over to your side, if you want, like, if that's what you're attempting to do, then the last thing you want to do is be hysterical. And it just, I'm sorry, the reaction to this is hysterical. That's all. Any thoughts, Rob?
What? Yeah, I mostly agree with you. I think being not cool doesn't help. It's yeah, I what are you gonna make? People shouldn't have signs. Fuck the Jews. You can make that statement. Hey, no coming into my bar with the sign. Fuck the Jews. You're not invited to do that here.
Yeah, I mean, we're any group of people. It's like, yeah, come on, you can't do that. Like, I don't know, if you hold that up at a bar, you're probably going like, oh, we might get kicked out for doing this, and then they'd be like, listen, dude, you got to put that away, or you got to leave. All right, anyway, let's keep. A
little bit surprising that people feel comfortable enough. Like, I remember once outside of Grand Central, I saw some guy on some anti-Jew tirade, and I was a little surprised by the comfort level, and that I guess Jews are such pussies that they'll be like, oh, you shouldn't have the sign. Whereas, like, with other groups of people, if you pulled that shit, you might just get stomped out on the corner. So there is something a little bit
you're talking Asians?
I don't know about Asians. You could probably get away with Asians, but there's certainly some groups of people that if you decide to make a very public display in the Times Square area about your hatred of this group of people, I think you'd be, I'd be surprised that you felt comfortable doing so, and I'd be surprised. I'd take the over under on how long until that sign at least gets torn up or someone protests it. So there is something a little bit surprising about that. People do have that comfort level to go to public places, with signs like that.
I don't disagree with you on that, and there's no question. I mean, there's been a real rise in the amount of like hostility toward Jewish people on Twitter for sure. And there's accounts with like a lot of followers who are way into that shit. And yeah, okay, so I guess that's a fair point, that like it is bleeding over to some degree where someone now feels comfortable enough to go do this at a Dave Portnoy event. I guess my main point is that like there's no way anyone did this without this being the intended reaction. Like, it's not as if they did this and then thought to themselves, like, I bet Dave Portnoy will love this. You know what I mean? Like, they're doing this knowing they're going to create that, and I think enjoying it. Anyway, let's keep playing.
And I just sat, and for the last 2 hours, I have been on the trail. Trust me, I've been on the trail. You think I'm going to put up with this shit at my bar? So I've been hunting down waitresses, the table who did it, and everything you can fucking name, because I want fucking consequences for fucking actions. So I'm not just sitting back like, oh, what are you going to know? Trust me, I have been on it. I believe the 2 waitresses responsible for the table already fired. I talked to one of them, one of the dumbest fucking humans I've ever talked to in my life. She's at a fucking dance recital. She's like, can I call you back in 20? No fucking honey, you fucking can't. This is your one chance to talk to me. Idiot, total idiot, this girl. I've talked to the guy, Mike Wade, who's tagged. Guess what? He wasn't even fucking there. I had this kid basically in tears turning state witness to me, rolling on the people who were there. I've talked to one of the 2 guys who fucking did it. He's like, I'm not anti-Semitic. He's basically crying to me. And I'm just like, I don't fucking buy it for a second. Who the fuck would do that sign in my fucking bar? You think I'm just going to sit here? I'm going to make it my fucking mission to put you in lights. My fucking mission. Kid's crying. I just hung up on his ass. I go, I'm giving you 1 fucking hour. 1 fucking hour. 2 kids go to Temple. Tell me, how do I make this fucking right before I go fucking ape shit? You want to take anti-Semitism classes? You want to do whatever? You make it feel right. I don't need your fucking tears. The Mike Wade kid wasn't even fucking there. Wasn't in the bar. We got the footage. He's not even fucking bar. Trust me, they're pulling the footage. They're doing this. I'm 20 steps ahead. I'm using everything. I'm like, I am going to come for your fucking throat unless you give me answers. The 2 girls at the bar, idiots. This one girl, one of the waitresses, I just told her, like, you're the dumbest motherfucker I've ever talked to. 25 years old, going on fucking 2, you fucking dumb fuck. What I'm saying is I'm getting
All right, so let's just pause it for a second here. Okay, I mean, that's it. You can cut that video off. That's basically it. But it's like, dude, isn't talking to a 25-year-old girl like that kind of fucked up who works for you? None, right? He's saying this is a waitress at his bar. You're like, I don't know, dude. Like, isn't the spirit of, I would think, like the spirit of why you would be against holding up a fuck the Jews sign is because you'd go like, hey, don't be dicks to people, man. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you really drive that message home, being like, so I cursed out a 25-year-old waitress who works for me. Like, all right. Just seems a little bit of an overreaction.
I half feel like I'm 8 years old being pulled into the principal's office laying on the Jewish guilt trip. But then I have kind of like the boss energy of, this is my fucking bar, mafiosa. Listen, honey, what the fuck did you do? Finding the 24-year-old who was in the bar and getting him to cry on the phone. Some of it's kind of fun.
It is kind of funny. I will admit that. I grant you that. But it's also kind of like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know. It just sounds like you're bullying all of these people now. And like, what did the waitress exactly do that was the fuck up? I guess it was on her to say like, oh, you can't have that sign here or something like that. But yeah, she's probably some young dingbat chick who is just like, I don't know. They had a sign. They were tipping well. So like, you know, like, I don't know. Anyway, let's go to the second video because this actually gets funnier to me and just more ridiculous. But let's go to the other video because that's the first video he made. Then there's an update. By the way, I've lost track. I think there's like 7 more update videos, but let's go to the next one because this was particularly funny to me.
Natalie, can you pull
Sure,
up the video of the actual incident? Do you have it?
Oh, yeah. That's probably a good idea. Yeah, let's get... Here, let's.
I mean, you can play this first and see if you can track it down.
Let's do this and then see. So she has some time. Let's see if we could find the video of the incident. But I really think I just saw a still picture, and it's just someone holding up a "fuck the Jews" sign.
All right, real quick update on the "fuck the Jews" sign that was at my bar in Philadelphia yesterday. 2 hours ago, they literally could have cooked an egg on my head. That's how much steam and heat I had come out of my ears. And the more I thought about it, it's like these are young fucking morons who did this. They're drunk. It's like, do you really want to ruin somebody's life? And let me be honest. I don't know what's going on in the world. I do, the Middle East, obviously. But I've been doing Barstool for 20 years. I've had more hate, more anti-Semitism in the last year and a half than I've ever had doing it. And whether people, it's like Kanye, the UFC guy, it's like mainstream lunatics. And I'm not talking about politics or what's going on in the Middle East, just hating groups of people. You hate my parents, you hate my grandparents, shit like that. It's crazy. So, yeah.
Let's pause it already there for a second. It really is, right? Look, man, it's just like you even say it there yourself without really thinking about it. But it's like, yeah, I've never seen it like the way it's been the last year, the last 18 months. Like, yeah, that's kind of the thing, right? And this has been like one of my messages that I've really been trying to get out there for the people who are very concerned about the rise in Jew hatred, is that it's like, yeah, dude, like maybe it is the case that this policy is going to come with this blowback. And that is not the same thing as justifying the blowback or excusing it. I think people are responsible for their actions, and like it's a fucked up thing to do to go bring this sign to a bar. Now, I will also say it's an insane thing to even consider the possibility of, should I ruin a young person's life for this crime? I mean, that is fucking insane. Like the fact that Portnoy even has to go, I was thinking I should ruin their lives, but now I'm going in a different direction, is like, yo, that's a crazy, I don't know. That's also, I think, my mentality, Rob. Like, I'm just old school. Like, I could understand going, I'm going to punch this kid in the mouth for doing this. I cannot understand going, I'm going to ruin this person's life. Like that to me is just too nutty. In the same way, I remember, I don't know, you weren't there for this, Rob. There was a thing a year ago. I almost got I came very close to getting into a fist fight with the guy who was running the open mic after the Legion of Skanks. It was at the old Creek in the Cave in Long Island City. And I really almost fucked this kid up. But like we got very close to getting into a fight, and he was in the wrong. And he was talking shit, and then he just kind of backed down and didn't want to fight. And I was furious. And then I go to the bar, and I was having a drink at the bar. And Rebecca, who is the owner of the club, she used to live above the club. So she comes down because she had heard about this, I guess. And she comes over to me, and she goes, and just to be clear here, I really wanted to fight this kid who was not willing to fight me after he was talking shit. I was white hot angry. This is maybe a half hour later, but I was furious at the kid. And then she comes down and she goes, hey, I heard what happened. Like, what's the problem here? Do you need me to get rid of this guy? And, like not that I have the most pull all throughout the world, but at the Creek in the Cave, I could have said the word and gotten this kid banned from the club. And I remember immediately just going, no, there's no problem, Rebecca. Everything's fine. Because like in my mind, it was always like, look, either we're going to fight or we're not, but I'm not doing that. I'm not trying to like tell on you so that your like livelihood is hurt in some way. That just seems wrong. And so anyway, I think that reaction is crazy. But look, in the same way that I think it's like fairly easy to recognize that like if we're going to have this policy of, say, bombing Muslim countries, and this involves killing a lot of innocent people, then we are going to deal with a bunch of Muslims who want to kill us. Like, that's one of the things that comes along with that policy. That doesn't justify terrorism. That doesn't mean Osama bin Laden was the good guy, but it does mean it's an understandable, predictable consequence of killing a lot of innocent people, is that the people who were close to them are going to be ready to kill you. And in the same sense, you just go, if you see this rise in anti-Semitism over the last year to 18 months, it is quite reasonable to say that maybe this is a result of a policy. Otherwise, why has it been rising? Is it a pure coincidence that it's been rising as we are backing Israel's destruction of Gaza? And then, if you're really concerned about the rise of Jew hatred, maybe think about what's going to happen if we get sucked into a war with Iran on behalf of Israel, and what this country ends up looking like. Or if we are to help the Israelis ethnically cleanse Gaza after this campaign is over, what that's going to do here. Do you think Jew hatred goes up or down as a result of that? And anyway, this is just like I think that, as I've been saying for a long time now, I think that if you want to see less people who hate Jews, which I certainly do, and, it may not be my number one priority. I think there are other outrages that rise above someone holding a sign at a bar. But if you want to see less of that, you can't just be like, you can't give in to the outrage that they are trying to generate. And you got to think about what policies we have that are leading to this. I don't know. To me, that all seems reasonable. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts, Rob.
I want to see the end of this clip.
All right, here, let's play the end of the clip.
It sounds like a walk back. Started off with "Don't fuck with Portnoy." Message received.
Watch it though.
I'll let it slide.
I'm going to fucking burn these people to the ground, their families, everything. And it's like, you know what? Maybe that's not the best course of action. Maybe I can use this as a teaching moment. And like, before people just are like, fuck the Jews or any group and the hate, let's try to like turn a hideous incident into maybe a learning experience, as cliche and very unlike me. But I talked to both the culprits who I know are super involved in it, talk to the families. I'm sending these kids to Auschwitz. They've agreed to go. That's, of course, the Holocaust concentration camp.
It's too much to bear, Rob. It's too much to bear. First off, can I just say, like,
funny. It started off like Sesame Street. I'm going to teach them a lesson. Then I got to get on a flight and go visit Auschwitz.
First of all, I will say, like, I understand.
That's so brutal.
Clearly, I just want to make it clear for any people out there that Dave Portnoy is talking about the museum that is currently at Auschwitz, but there is something about I'm going to send them to Auschwitz that still rings very Nazi-like to me, to be like, that's the appropriate punishment. I'm going to send them to Auschwitz. It just kind of comes up this. It's not
like, if you just told me I had to go touch the floor of Germany and come back, even that's punishment. But I have to go all the way to Germany and visit the site of horrible humanity. Oh, that's so brutal. And then, Dude, also, you can't even get through it by cracking jokes, which is I personally there was once a school trip that was doing. I was like, I can't go. I'll just be cracking jokes the whole time. This is not for me. I'm not mature enough, nor do I want to process any. And there were one of the rabbis were even why go visit God's devastation. But that's just such a. Like, that's almost the worst part, is having to go and be respectful the whole time if you're some dickbag kid from Philadelphia who showed up to a bar with the "fuck the Jew" sign, and now you got to go and spend 4 days pretending to be I wonder if Portnoy goes with them also and chaperones it.
Dude, well, so here's the funny thing, right? You could end this video. We don't have to play any more of it. But so this is the funniest thing, too, is that, so I don't know where the saga's at now, but the next video after this, like his third emergency press conference, is that they've gone dark on him. Like, they just stopped responding after he was like, you have to go to Auschwitz. So they're like, they're just like, go to fucking Auschwitz. What are you talking about, dude?
It's such a funny thing of wealthy people doling out punishments, where it's like your parents would give you a timeout, but a guy who can pay to send you on a ticket will mandate that you go take a tour of Auschwitz.
Let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Monetary Metals. I've been telling you about this company for a while. I love these guys. And as you may know, gold prices have been breaking all-time highs in 2024. And now you can get your gold to work for you, generating interest income every month, paid in additional ounces of physical gold. You can earn up to 5% on your gold and silver in their lease offerings, and accredited investors can earn double-digit returns in their bond offerings. Again, all of the interest is paid in ounces, which are stored for free on your behalf. So if you're tired of your gold and silver collecting dust at home, or worse, racking up fees having your metal professionally stored, check out monetary-metals.com to learn how you can start putting your metal to work today. All right, let's get back into the show. But listen, aside from just being hilarious, like, guys, this is all wrong. This is just not the way. First off, don't go into this woke bullshit about how this is a teachable moment and you've got to go, essentially you're saying you got to go take Jewish HR classes or some sensitivity training or something like that. This is not how much do we need to run this experiment? This does not work. It's also just, it's
and
just
what if
stupid.
And what if the kids go over there and they're such anti-Semites to realize, oh, there's actually an efficient system to get rid of them.
You go, my God, I thought the best we could do was hold up signs at bars. But no, we could set up a whole apparatus here.
Yeah, there's hope.
The people who bring a fuck the Jews sign to a bar don't need to be taught that that was insensitive. They're aware. And nobody hasn't heard of the Holocaust. Like it's not an issue of educating people about this. And this is just, I mean, look, all I'm saying is like, if you want to see this stuff persist and you want to see more of it, this is the way to deal with it. Okay.
I hope he does a daily press conference of 102 days since these people did not report to Auschwitz.
Dude, it is hilarious. Just hilarious that that's the direction he went and said, I'm sending you to Auschwitz. Look, man, like I'll just say, and this is the old, look, I'm not saying like this is the exact perfect model or anything like that. But you know, there was that Daryl Davis guy, and he was this black dude, and he was famous for converting people out of the Ku Klux Klan, and he would he would collect their hoods and like keep their hoods. I forget how many he's got, but he's got like 20 hoods or something like that of like all these guys who used to be in the Klan who he convinced out of it. And you know, the way he would do it is he would have dinner with them, and he wouldn't even talk about the fucking Klan. And he wouldn't even he wouldn't get it. He wasn't angry at them. He wouldn't preach to them. They wouldn't talk politics, nothing like that. They just break bread and have some dinner. Like he would just be cool. And then because he was being cool and he was black, eventually they kind of started going like, shit, you know? And then like, I think as he built a rapport with them, he would just kind of let them know like how much that hurt him. You know what I mean? It was like, that's like really hurtful to me that you be a part of this organization, and then let them do all. I'm saying, I'm not saying that's the perfect dynamic. I'm just saying this ain't it. This ain't it. You're not forcing under duress clearly here, right? Like it's not like, hey, I'd really like to educate you about this and I'd like to bring you here to Auschwitz. It's like, hey, I could either ruin your fucking life or you could go here to, that's not the way. That's not how you convert people. It's like step number one, be cool. Step number one is like, be a decent person. Treat people with decency, okay? Step number two, don't catastrophize things. Don't make them a bigger deal than they are. Then you lose all credibility. The thing is, like, you could just go, like, you could just call it what it is. Be like, come on, man. Like, that's not cool to do that. And then you could just have a conversation with people. Like, they're human beings too. What would have been way more interesting to me than any of this would be like, you try, like, interview these guys. And you could even hold them accountable. But again, follow my rules. Follow the Dave Smith rules here. You're not going to be there. How could you? My God. But it's just start a conversation. You don't even have to talk about this. Start talking about sports with them for a little bit. And then get into this. And then just be like, hey, dude, you know, if you're like a fan of my thing, you come into my bar, you know, this really caused me a whole headache. Also, I'm Jewish. It's kind of like personally insulting to me. I guarantee you have a much better shot at results attacking it that way than you do with this stuff. But this one was more hilarious, so I'll give you that. All right, got to wrap up there. We'll be back with a brand new episode tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Catch you then. Peace. Everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How are you, sir? How were your weekend of shows?
Oh, we had a fantastic run of porch tours. It was a good time. In the future, not driving down to Virginia Beach on Memorial Day weekend. Look, I'm still flustered from that much. I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
This is a good weekend to take off and actually go on your family vacation.
It's that traffic is probably the worst traffic in the country. That DC traffic is rough.
I left at noon, like thinking I'd clear New York City and etc. And I didn't get over the bridge until like 2 p.m. It was a nightmare. But anyways, this weekend, I'm out in Texas. I got a wild run of porches. I got Austin on Sunday, stack lineup. Scott Horton's going to be out there, Rockport, Texas, San Antonio, Texas. And then I'm out west for about 2 weeks doing all sorts of shows. You can find them all at porchtour.com, except Vegas Wise Guys, which you can find on their website.
Hell yeah. Awesome. That sounds great. Happy, glad you had a good time. Sorry about the traffic. I'll tell you from the other side of it, doing a family vacation for a weekend, you can also hit traffic on that too. It turns out, Rob, it's not, the traffic doesn't only get you if you're doing comedy shows. It was also, that was, something. But all right, great. I had a really great, nice family weekend, and I got a lot of stuff coming up. Me and Rob have a lot of stuff together. The next date is June 13th and 14th in Salt Lake City at Wise Guys, one of our favorite clubs. I will be doing some shows without Rob here locally in New Jersey at the Comedy Dojo, or the Dojo of Comedy, I should say. June 20th and 21st, I'll be running my new hour over there. If you're in the New York, New Jersey area and you want to come, I know we don't play here as much as we actually play the road, ironically. And then we got Denver Comedy Works and Hilarities in Cleveland, a lot of our favorite stops. I did want to mention, I know this is a little bit early, but this one, got to let people know. My Comedy Mothership weekend is, I'll be headlining there for a weekend in August. It's August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. The reason why I try my best to give you guys advance notice is because it's the Comedy Mothership. All these shows will sell out. So if you want to get tickets, go get them now. There's tickets available for every single show. They just put them up on the website. They usually go very fast. So if you want to come see me and Austin in August, go right now. You can get them at the Comedy Mothership site or at my site, comicdavesmith.com. I'll take you over there to their site. Okay. So I literally just made it back home. I apologize. We're doing this a little bit later than usual. I literally just rushed in. So there's, a few things going on that I thought would be interesting for us to get into. And maybe even this might be the one to start with. Oh, by the way, shout out to the fan who brought me this Pure Misinformation Artist shirt, which is what Sam Harris called me on his show. I thought that was pretty funny. So anyway, yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm wearing it. Okay. So one of the things that I've thought was kind of interesting over the last few weeks, I guess this has been, a topic that's come up. And I think we did address briefly like some of this on the show, but it has to do with the new spending bill, which I guess has made it through the House. Is that where it's at right now, Rob? Is it through the House? Do you know?
I believe so. That sounds accurate.
Yes. Now, of course, Thomas Massey voted against it. It made it out of the House regardless, but of course, Donald Trump took the opportunity to attack Thomas Massey, who is objectively more America first than Donald Trump. On Donald Trump's most America first day, he has not been as America first as Thomas Massey on his least America first day. But it is there is something that's kind of interesting about this. Like, okay, there's a few things. Number one, I guess if you were to kind of zoom out, you would say there's nothing interesting about this. This is just par for the course. This is how government always operates. What are you telling me? Whoever's in the White House is going to sign a gigantic spending bill. The establishment hacks in Congress will all gladly put all of their pork into it, and Thomas Massey will vote against it. and it will go through. So, okay. In terms of, on that level, it just seems very normal. But of course, what's different about this is that, number one, Donald Trump, he claimed, and many people around, or many of his supporters claimed, that he was kind of duped the first time. It would be different this time. Obviously, he had the whole DOGE experiment behind him. But with all of that happening, essentially, we just got another giant spending bill crammed through. And I think, you see the CBO numbers on this, they're never right about anything. It's always worse than what the Congressional Budget Office says it's going to be. But even they are claiming it's going to raise the debt by $4 trillion over the next 10 years. It's just more of the same. None of the cuts that people were hoping might come through, and even the stuff they're talking about these tinkering around the edges, like maybe they're going to try to clean up a little bit of the fraud in Medicaid or something like that. Now, of course, I'll say it's interesting because when it comes to government spending, it's almost the only topic in politics today that's still so boring. Like everything else is like new and crazy and wild, but when it comes to government spending, it's the most boring arguments for it. It's the most boring criticisms against it. Of course, MSNBC could sit there and go, they're slashing government. They're kicking everybody off of welfare or something like this. But what we're really looking at is it's another meet the new boss, same as the old boss type deal here, where Donald Trump is going to demonize the only principled member of the House, or one of the very few. The DOGE effort seems to have completely failed, and here we go off the fiscal cliff. I don't know. Any thoughts on this, Rob?
Well, you basically said it. They're raising it, I've heard, between $3.5 and $5 trillion without any statements whatsoever of reenacting DOGE. What is the movement with DOGE now that Elon Musk is no longer at the at the helms of it? What is the plan for reducing government spending? And particularly as people have gotten upset about raising prices, American manufacturing, and all of this is a result of government spending. And interest rates are going to start going up on our debt. I don't know that our Fed can endlessly buy our treasuries and pretend like there's endless demand for it. So listen, the financial stuff is boring until it isn't. And as to how much wiggle room the Fed has to engage in new quantitative easing or other mechanisms to keep propping up prices, if the thing finally goes bust, then it gets real exciting and people get real angry. But there was a real opportunity with DOGE and the American people to bring down the government debt. And it just seems like we're getting to the point where someone's going to have to deal with it. I don't understand how we can just push up interest rates, have these entitlement programs. You look at it on paper and you're like, this is going to pop at some point. This can't just go forever. And I don't know. Donald Trump has had as good of an opportunity as anyone to at least address the fraud, or at least make some sort of gestures to pretend like you want to get this under control.
Well, look, when you say it's a missed opportunity, it is, and as you got there at the end, and you're absolutely right. This is on Donald Trump. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who you can blame and a lot of people who you can point fingers at, like a lot. This is Washington, D.C. afterward, and we're talking about, when you're talking about government spending, you're talking about what is DC's budget. And so obviously there's a lot of forces in DC who are like, we'd like our budget to be as high as possible. Like, kind of to be expected, but it kind of just can't be overstated how much this is on Donald Trump. And that the actual issue is that first of all, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about anything, and he doesn't actually have deep convictions about any of this stuff. He never really had any deep convictions about getting to the bottom of government corruption or draining the swamp, for that matter, which again, I've made this point a lot over the years, but it is a really important one. So I'll make it once more here. Government spending is the swamp. That's the swamp. You want to drain the swamp, then you have to cut government spending. You want to continue the swamp, you continue government spending. You want to increase the swamp, increase government spending. That's what it is. Like, these are very basic things, which, by the way, Elon Musk does understand, because he has several times tweeted videos of Milton Friedman making this exact point. So like he does have some understanding of sound economics, but it's like this, right? Government spending is the tax. It doesn't matter what your tax rate is. The real measure of taxation is government spending, because in order for government to spend, the government has three mechanisms by which they can spend money. Number one, they can tax you, and they can spend the money that they've taxed from you. Number two, they can borrow the money, and essentially borrowing the money is just promising to tax you in the future. So they're borrowing against their tax slaves, which are us. And if they borrow, they can pay it back with what they can tax us from. And then the third mechanism is to print money. And printing money is essentially a tax too. It's, it's just a tax paid in a different form. They're just robbing your purchasing power in order to spend money. And so, by the way, this is the reason why, if anyone else did what government does, it'd be a crime. The reason why counterfeiting money is a crime is because you are robbing from everybody else. It's not just like counterfeiting shouldn't be illegal if this wasn't the case. It's not like if you can counterfeit money, it's not like you just found a cheat code and now you get free stuff. You're robbing from everybody else by lowering the value of their money to get it for yourself. So that's what government's doing. They're doing the same thing, okay? So if you understand that all government can do is tax you or promise to tax you in the future, then that's what government spending is. And when you talk about the swamp, I mean, what is the swamp? The swamp is that Washington, D.C. is filled with the most corrupt monsters in the goddamn world, and that they only get money and resources from extracting it from the American workers. The American working people have to have their money stolen from them, extracted to these criminals in DC, so that they can spend their money on all types of corrupt and destructive shit. You have, if you look through it, all the, the richest districts in America, and you see how many of them are right in the suburbs, right outside of Washington, D.C. Well, why is that? It's not because they have great big factories in Washington and they're producing so much stuff. It's not like, hey, this is capitalism, man. They're the ones who are making all the goods and services that everyone else wants to buy. No, in fact, they make no goods and services that anybody would voluntarily want to buy. They make war. They make, a bunch of, grants for green energy companies. But that's the whole essence. That's government spending. Okay. That it is the swamp. And the reason why this is so clearly on Donald Trump, and I will say that it seems to me in Trump 2.0, in the second Donald Trump presidency, 47, not 45, Donald Trump seems to, and there might be some, it might be somewhat reasonable in some areas why he went this tack, but Donald Trump has been very focused on executive orders. He's been very focused on executive fiat. He seemed to be somewhat focused on this DOGE thing, which was a creation of the executive, and not so much with Congress. Now, on some level, you might say that, well, Congress is corrupt and Congress has failed on all of these things, so he's pursuing these other means. But the reason why I point this out is to make it very clear, because there's really no passing the buck here. Donald Trump, this DOGE thing, first of all, was very popular with the American people. And Donald Trump was in a position, when Donald Trump has, when he first came in for his second term, and he has record high approval ratings for Trump, his highest approval ratings ever. When he's north of 50% in terms of his approval rating. But you have to understand what that means is that Donald Trump's approval rating amongst Republicans is in the high 90s. Like Donald Trump came in where the Republicans are all behind him. And what that means is that Donald Trump has enormous leverage over the Congress. You know, like if he wanted to, he could pick a few issues and go straight, instead of blasting Thomas Massey for having some fucking principles, he could have said, listen, every goddamn Republican who's in the Congress, every single one of you have said you care about limited government. You've said you're against big government. You're for small government. You're for, balancing the budget. You're against this fiscal insanity. He could have been like, look, here's the DOGE bill. I'm presenting it to Congress. There's nothing in this. It's a 3-page bill that says we're going to meet DOGE's spending cuts, recommendations. And if any Republican votes against it, we're primarying you. Well, Donald Trump is going to keep a list and expose them for the frauds they are. And they'd have to fall in line. They would have had no choice. The thing is, he just doesn't care about the issue that much. He liked having Elon Musk around the campaign. He liked the energy that brought. He liked having a guy who would give him a couple $100 million. He liked having a guy who would make sure his message is spread far and wide on X, make sure his people aren't censored, things like that. But at the end of it, he just didn't really care about cutting government spending. And the thing that's so frustrating, Rob, is that Donald Trump does seem to have, look, he's in this situation here that's so unique. Not only having such a high approval rating amongst Republicans, having the ability to put pressure on them, but also he doesn't have another election to win. He doesn't have to worry about getting reelected. And he's even said with the tariff stuff that he's willing to take some short-term pain to have a bigger overall correction that would put America on more solid ground. But he just doesn't know enough to know that the only way to actually do that, or the most important thing, would be to hack up government spending and government regulations. That's the thing that, while not the regulations, but while spending, there might be some short-term pain. And I'm not even sure there would be too much of that, to be honest. But it would put us on a long-term, like on solid footing. And yet he just doesn't choose to care about this issue. So I'm sorry, this is on Donald Trump now. And that's that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, my plea to the Trump loyalists is, listen, Trump was better than the alternative. The alternative was dangerous. The alternative wanted to censor the internet, probably spend more money, and have even more central planning for windmills and things that are probably worse than trying to bring back American manufacturing, and was going to open up the border and probably support these wars. The alternative was worse. But when Donald Trump does things like this and you refuse to criticize him, you're no better than the Democrats when they tried to pretend that Biden doesn't have dementia because, hey, the other team's so bad, we all just need to rally behind this guy. And Trump is here. He is very powerful, and conservatives should care about fiscal spending, particularly when you just graph out the insane place that we are in right now. You look at every president and how they added to the debt, and then how COVID came around and they just added even more. And now this is Trump's first, what are we, 6 months in or whatever? I mean, this is the big, beautiful bill. But here's your opportunity to actually have a conversation about spending. And when there was so much interest in a great storyline in at least reducing the fraud, to make no effort whatsoever to make any reduction, but instead actually increase it by 3.5 trillion. This is something conservatives should be going. This is not what the conservative party should be. This is actually democratic socialism. This is the old school Donald Trump Democrat who managed to take over the Republican Party by speaking out for workers. And now you've got a Democratic socialist who wants to increase spending even more. You guys should criticize him for it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And I will say there is something that might be, I mean, somewhat of a red pilling. I hope not a black pilling, but that we got the richest, most successful genius of all time and put him on the task of government spending, and he couldn't do anything. We kind of got and look, there might be something in there that's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's one that we ought to swallow.
I think he probably could have done a whole lot. I just don't think you can really both have a government job and a private sector job at the same time. I do think that there are conflicts of interest in working both sectors at the same time. And in his instance, the market actually punished him for it, and that he had a product that was very, firstly, I think he does a good job of shilling and creating more interest in his product and his stock price than is actually warranted based on, you know, what they're doing in the marketplace. And it's similar to what the game Donald Trump's playing with tariffs is. I don't think we're actually in a fiscally good enough position to be pulling these kind of gambles and trying to exert this much pressure on other people. We're trying to keep a faulty and broken system afloat. And I think Elon Musk ran into the same little hiccup there.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think there's there's a real issue with that. I sent you this tweet earlier. I thought this was interesting. This is from Elon Musk, tweeted this a couple days ago. And he said, well, it was responding to somebody who said, I wonder if this is why Elon has somewhat moved away from politics. And he responded by saying, I have come to the perhaps obvious conclusion that accelerating GDP growth is essential. DOGE has and will do great work to postpone the day of bankruptcy of America, but the prolificacy of government means that only radical improvements in productivity can save our country. And so what is that other than kind of giving up and going like, look, we need.
That's not giving up. That's not giving up. That's going, I pledge allegiance to Overlord Trump, and I'm sorry that I educated the market over the fact that there's fraud and overspending in government. And so now to stay in line with the government and Donald Trump so that hopefully I can get favorable contracts. I tell you, the American people, that cutting spending is a mistake, because what we need is more government spending, because then there'll be future growth that gets us out of this mess. That's what that is.
Well, yes. So I get your point, but I just mean
essentially giving up, but it's a little bit more corrupt than that. It's not just giving up and going, I couldn't do it. It's all right, I'll get in line and quit talking about the spending.
Yeah, essentially, we're going to have to grow our way out of this. And so, of course, in a way, what this, kind of misses the point is just that how corrupt and how damaging the institution of our government has been. And that it's like, oh, okay, so we have to grow our way out of this. So in other words, the only answer is to feed this monster, to give it more. And then hopefully we can just be so productive on top of that we can, grow our way out of it. The problem is like, it's kind of like trying to deal with cancer by being like, listen, we can't eliminate the cancer. So we just got to really hope that the healthy cells grow a lot quicker than the cancerous cells. And you're like, yeah, well, that's kind of not how it works. And you kind of actually do have to eliminate this cancer in order to, make the patient healthy again. And look, again, it's just this is when I say giving up, you're right, Rob. It's an important correction, but I just mean like he's essentially admitting that like, yep, the thing that I was selling you on, I can't do it. I can't. The thing that I was telling you that I was like, oh, we're going to cut $2 trillion out of the budget. Nothing's off limits, including the Pentagon. All that big talk really just resulted in nothing. And, this is something where I've been of two minds about this. And I will say, as I said on the show, my instincts from the very beginning were that DOGE was not going to be successful, that DOGE was essentially a made up government department. But I was like, well, look, maybe this will be great. They'll at least like get the issue addressed and they'll get people talking about government spending again. And then there was now I will say, as I said this on the show, but I had dinner with Vivek Ramaswamy. He was really high on DOGE. He was like, nah, dude, we're going to blow you away. There's going to be some great things we're going to do. A few weeks later, he was out of DOGE, but regardless, I am humble enough to go like, all right, look, I have my preconceived notions. I have my views on things. But look, obviously, like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are incredibly brilliant, incredibly successful people. It's like, hey, maybe these guys actually got something figured out that I don't know about. And they're going to be able to maneuver a way here. But, that didn't end up happening. And now to the point that you made before, Rob, there is, it's true that when you were selling the thing as fraud and abuse, it's perhaps true that this was a more palatable way to sell cuts in government spending, to point out the fact that, hey, look, there are these areas that we all agree, like everyone agrees there shouldn't be fraud in Medicare. So, okay, like maybe we have a difference of opinion about, whether Medicare is a good program or Medicaid's a good program or not, but we could all agree on the fraud. And look, we found all this fraud and USAID and all these other things. And so, yeah, okay, maybe there's like a wider audience that would accept that than just arguing for spending cuts because we need fiscal sanity. But the problem is that when you sell it that way and then you fail anyway, then you kind of get the worst of both worlds. Because number one, you failed to get any spending cuts anyway. But number two, you didn't even really educate the public about government spending. And I mean, look, Elon did some of this. Like I said, he was sharing some great, Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell videos and stuff like that. But I just feel like it's not only that they failed, it's like they never even really started the conversation about government spending that needed to happen. Like they never even really got into it, where it was like, look, like, first of all, Donald Trump is sitting here advocating for $1 trillion defense budget. So clearly he's not interested in cutting defense. He wants to increase defense spending, which is, of course, a unnecessary and just a terrible policy. But then on top of that, it's like, what are we, if you're never going to, you can't cut defense spending. He's unwilling to even talk about cutting entitlement spending. Okay. Well, then there's no fiscal sanity here. And the idea that, like it's almost like Elon Musk, maybe without ever saying it, but it certainly was pretty heavily implied that somehow like we could get our fiscal house in order without ever dealing with defense or entitlements, but just from finding like fraud, just from finding like, USAID spending money on trannies in Afghanistan. We'll balance the budget off cutting that. But that was always just made up. That's not true. I'm not saying there's no fraud. There's tons of it. But the real thing is that the whole thing is fraudulent. The whole government is based off fraud. All of it. Look, all of these entitlement programs are they're wealth transfer programs from a poorer group to a richer group. It's the most goddamn corrupt thing in the world. Like you could have an argument, right? You could have an argument in theory about wealth redistribution. Now, obviously, me and Rob would be opposed to wealth redistribution. I don't even like the term redistribution because I don't think it's an accurate term. Wealth wasn't distributed to begin with. It was created. It was produced. It's not distributed. It's not, like there's something about the term redistribution of wealth that almost like it's almost like cheating. It's like a gender affirming care. Like the answer is baked into the description, right? Because like if it's gender affirming, then obviously you should be for it. It's like reproductive rights, these terms that people
or rights.
Huh?
I would just to speak to your point, gender affirming care has the word care in it, which makes it seem like it's actually helpful. So
yes,
kind of what you're speaking to with the wealth redistribution has the word distribution as if it was just the wealth was just handed to some individuals. So now we're redistributing it, not earned. Yeah.
Well, right. It was already distributed once, and obviously it wasn't distributed that great, Rob. So let's just redistribute this one more time. But the thing is that it never was distributed. Like in a sense, like paychecks could be distributed. Like a manager might distribute paychecks, but the wealth itself is created. It's not distributed, So anyway, so I don't even like that term. But in theory, you could have these arguments where, like, maybe you'd have like a free market capitalist in a debate with a democratic socialist, and the democratic socialist would be arguing for distributive policies like, look, these people have so much, we should tax them and give it to the people who have less. And then the free market capitalist might argue, no, you don't understand how economics works, and that in fact, when these people, when the wealthy people have money, they don't just sit on it under their mattress. And even if they did, that would just make everybody else's money more valuable. But in fact, this is what you need for the capital investment into new technologies, and that this actually makes everybody richer. That these are all interesting theoretical discussions, but Medicare and Social Security are like these viewed as like these third rails. Almost nobody even like almost nobody has the balls to even just say, I think we should cut these programs, let alone actually push for that to be enacted. But both Medicare and Social Security are distributive policies that distribute money from a poorer group to a richer group. Young people are poorer than old people. They have lower incomes, they have lower net worths, they have less assets, obviously. And yet we're distributing money from them to the boomers. It's like the most corrupt thing ever. And again, it's just nobody in DOGE, or like, essentially, I guess my point here is that if you're going to completely spectacularly fail on policy and deliver nothing, and then you're left with like, well, did you at least educate some people along the way? And it's like, no, they never even did that. They never even just told the truth, which would have been like, at least there'd be some value in that. And, you know, this is how like these Faustian bargains kind of, they end up working out this way quite often. It's like, hey, it's like, just don't tell the truth. Don't tell the whole truth, you know, just cover up part of it, and then you'll get a little bit of what you want. And then you end up doing that, and you don't even get the little bit of what you wanted. And then you just blew at least your one big opportunity, which would have been to just tell the truth unallowed from a loud stage, you know, tell the truth to a lot of people. So I don't know. You know, I'd like to be wrong about this. But it does seem to me that between that tweet, this spending bill, the way Donald Trump, it's really quite something. It's not only did Donald Trump not insist on getting some spending cuts and then use his megaphone to put pressure on the Republicans who are fucking phonies, who have sat here for decades talking about how they care about fiscal responsibility. Right now, in this moment, when Donald Trump is enormously popular with Republicans, when Republicans have the presidency and the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court and the culture, the Democrats' approval rating is down in the low 20s. In this moment, we're going to pass through another giant spending bill. And then on top of that, as the cherry on top, he's going to demonize Massey, of all people. That's who he's going to go after, Thomas Massey. So, I mean, what can you say? What can you say other than DOGE failed and Donald Trump failed? There. I mean, you know, I tried to not be one of these Debbie Downers about it from the beginning, which I could have just done from the beginning and going, this is all destined to fail anyway. But at least I was like, hey, at least someone's trying, it seems. Let's try to get some enthusiasm going behind this. But I don't know what else to say. If someone wants to make an argument to me like, no, here's where they really succeeded. Okay, please show me. I'm not seeing it. Seems like a total failure. And then ultimately, I think you got this right, is that, and look, I'm not even blaming Elon Musk for this. To be clear, I'm blaming Donald Trump for this, not Elon Musk. But I think you're absolutely right in your assessment, Rob, that was Elon at the end going like, all right, well, no point in me being a martyr over this cause that's going to fail anyway. I might as well go back to being a very successful, you know, the most successful man in the world. That seems like a better deal. Yeah, we really just got to grow our way out of it. Okay. All right. Let's see if we could do that.
So two things. I think everything you said is a fair and good analysis of Donald Trump and where we're at. I'm always a little bit reluctant to bet against the guy because he's got so much ADD. You never know when he pulls a rabbit out of his ass and changes course, and then all of a sudden you're looking like a bit of an asshole for criticizing him. He does have that Bugs Bunny way of, making the criticizers look like assholes. So I still, as much as I hate on the Trump loyalists, I'm always a little bit reluctant shitting on him the same way I shat on Biden, where like you knew that Biden was never changing course and it was all corruption. And then just speaking to Elon Musk's tweet, if government is spending money not during a recession, what is the economic model that you're working with there for growth? And if you're taxing individuals and you're spending more money, I thought that, I mean, that does two things. One is it crowds out the money available to the private sector, and then it also draws down capital within the country. So I'm not even really sure how government's spending money now on entitlement programs or on the military or whatever else they need $3.5 trillion more for. What is even the pitch for how this leads to economic growth? I understand an argument for, hey, we're going to be spending more money because we're cutting taxes, but that's going to lead to economic growth. I at least understand how you can present that argument. I don't even understand what the plan is here of increasing spending. Yeah, firstly, if we just kept the spending levels without correcting anything, that was crazy. We're increasing spending above that. Can you explain to me where the pitch is here of how that leads to economic growth in a way that we grow out of this? I mean, just where's the pitch?
Oh, yeah. No, there essentially isn't one. It's just like essentially where DC is addicted to spending and they don't want to stop. And so and then you work around that to go, so then I guess the answer is to grow our way out of the economy or something like that. But all that seems to grow with this model is the power and control of DC. Natalie, could you pull in? Rob emailed us several videos, but there was one where it said the dissenters on spending bill the spending bills.
You got in the Senate Ron Johnson and Rand Paul speaking out against this.
You know what? Hold on. I think Natalie may not have been on that here. I'll just text it to you right now. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, you've got Ron Johnson and Rand Paul are the senators that I've heard speaking out against this. And then you had Thomas Massie, who had some good words about it on the congressional floor. The Thomas Massie clip is a short clip. I think it's all of about a minute and a half. And then the Rand Paul and the Ron Johnson are both longer news interviews, but the first couple of minutes are at least.
Let's start with the Rand Paul one, which is the first one I sent you, Natalie.
But it speaks to what we're getting at here, which is essentially, hey, conservatives should not be supporting increased in government spending. This is this is not conservative, and it's also just not good government policy.
Well, it's interesting because Rand Paul came first got elected to the Senate in 2010. Crazy now, that was 15 years ago. But he first came in on the Tea Party wave. I mean, he was here to be like, hey, the whole thing is we're here to cut spending and get the fiscal house back in order. And it is amazing how, it's just amazing to me as someone who, has been paying pretty close attention to this stuff for 20 years and is fairly well read on the history before that. It is just in my lifetime how much the Republicans have always claimed every time they're out of power, they go, oh my God, these guys are spending so recklessly. Elect us to bring some type of sanity to this. And there's just been so many, every single time they have complete control of the government, there's some reason why now is not the time. I mean, we can't even get with a GOP controlled House, Senate, Supreme Court, and White House. We can't even get back to pre-COVID levels of spending, which were higher than the Obama levels of spending. We can't even get back to that. And look, I mean, this is the best argument to be a member of the Libertarian Party. And believe me, it's the arguments to join the Libertarian Party are only made by Republicans. Don't listen to the Libertarians. They'll convince you not to join. But the only thing is just that it's like, look, the Republicans claim to stand for this shit. And how many chances do they get? There has never, ever in my lifetime been a year where spending went down from the previous year. Republicans have never managed to do it. I mean, what can you say? All right, here, let's go to this video here.
Joining us now, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I want to get to some foreign policy. But first, what's going down here in Washington as the big, beautiful bill, as it's been called, is now heading to you in the Senate. The Hill says this: House GOP leaders spent weeks in delicate talks with Republican holdouts before cobbling together a fragile agreement. The critical voices of the House debate are cautioning their upper chamber counterparts not to alter their design too severely, or it will never get through the House on its return. We'll talk about some of your specific objections, but how much does that worry factor into your calculus, whether or not what you do in the Senate can get back through the House?
You know, the bigger a bill, the more it includes, the more difficult it is to get everybody to agree to things. I supported the tax cuts in 2017. I support making them permanent, so I support that part of the bill. I support spending cuts. I think the cuts currently in the bill are wimpy and anemic, but I still would support the bill, even with wimpy and anemic cuts, if they weren't going to explode the debt. The problem is the math doesn't add up. They're going to explode the debt by, the House says $4 trillion. The Senate's actually been talking about exploding the debt $5 trillion. This year in September, when our fiscal year ends, the deficit will be about $2.2 trillion. Now, people used to always say, the Republicans would say, well, that's Bidenomics, that's Biden spending levels. When March, every Republican, virtually every Republican other than me, voted to continue the Biden spending levels, which are going to give us a $2.2 trillion deficit. Now, if you increase the debt ceiling $4 to $5 trillion, that means they're planning on $2 trillion this year and more than $2 trillion next year. That's just not conservative. So I've told them if they strip out the debt ceiling, I'll consider, even with the imperfections, voting for the rest of the bill. But I can't vote to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. There's got to be someone left in Washington who thinks debt is wrong and deficits are wrong and wants to go in the other direction. The idea that we're going to explode deficits, and the projections are now looking at over $3 trillion in deficits over the next 10 years, I think is just, not a serious proposal.
So the debt ceiling is going to come sooner or later, and Republicans, many of them, and those who advocate for including the debt ceiling being raised within this measure, say work today is broken.
All right. Well, you could there you go. You can pause it there. Well, yeah. How can you even argue with this? It's funny because I've literally just been through this so many times, like just since we've had the show going. I've just been through this so many times at this point. But here is an argument that nobody can ever make, nobody even ever pretends to. Or it's simple, a question nobody can even answer. What is the point of having a debt ceiling? Like, why do we have one? Isn't one of them, like one of these corrupt congressmen, have the integrity to just flat out say, I think we should get rid of the debt ceiling? They just have a debt ceiling. We have a rule under the law that says you can't go more than this much into debt. And then every time we hit that much, we just raise the number. It's just too ridiculous. So what's the point of having it? The whole point of having the debt ceiling seems to be to raise it.
Yeah, and that's the point. They can pretend like they're doing something. They can pretend, what are you talking about? We're not financially responsible. We have a debt ceiling. And then we get together and renegotiate how we can safely raise it. And so what, 3 times a year they get together, they threaten shutting down government, and then they have all their meetings. Then at the last moment, they want to go on vacation, and so they pass it. And I guess they can create the illusion like they're actually doing something.
Yep, that seems like it's pretty much it. And, again, like I said before, but particularly like in this moment, where you just can't get any type of movement on this stuff. You're like, well, then I don't know what it's going to take before that we would get to a point where you actually could. But again, this is just, it's this continuous cycle of bullshit. And as you said, this is the game that they play, that we're going to constantly, now multiple times a year, have this, oh my God, the debt ceiling. And then, of course, it's kind of the typical, like I said at the beginning, it's this boring game where then they can phrase it, or they can frame it, I should say, as anybody who ever talks about any type of cuts, no matter how modest they are, is, oh my God, you're kicking people off of welfare. Oh my God, you're kicking the most helpless people off of these programs. People are going to starve. It's going to be a nightmare. And then this is the whole game of how DC ends up keeping its corrupt system going. And like, nobody will actually look you in the eyes and say, oh, no. If if all of the suburbs outside of Washington, D.C. aren't permeated by multimillionaires who produce nothing of value in the market, then things would be terrible. They won't just say that to you because they know like that'd just be too crazy. But so what they will do is say anytime anyone doesn't want to drastically increase government spending from its already insane high levels, you basically just want some poor single mom to not have health care. That's the game. And you would think, like, one of the things that's kind of tragic about this is that you would think Donald Trump would have been the guy who was uniquely positioned to smack down all that bullshit. And to just like, he could have simply just rolled his eyes and been like, shut up. No one believes you guys anymore. You know, and then it would have just been like, aha, yeah, he's right. You know, he's right. They're all full of shit. No one's going to be starving. This is fine. And he doesn't want to do it, you know? And I don't know. It's like he wants 0% interest rates again. He wants record high government spending because I think he thinks that'll make the GDP and the stock market look really good at this time next year. And then Donald Trump can say, look, I delivered the greatest economy ever. And I think I really think that's as simple. That's the explanation. But I don't know. Hey guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, a brand new sponsor who I'm thrilled to have on board, and that is Blackout Coffee. Now, people, if you know me, you know I am a coffee enthusiast. I would not bring you a crappy brand of coffee. Luckily, I have an excellent brand in Blackout. Not only is Blackout Coffee great, but it's also roasted right here in the United States of America, and it's a company that is dedicated to liberty and freedom and capitalism and the Constitution and all of the things that we hold dear. They've got over 25,000 five-star reviews for a reason. This stuff is excellent. I've been sipping on the cold brew all day. Love this stuff. Go pick up some for yourself. Head over to blackoutcoffee.com/problem right now and use the promo code problem to get 20% off your first order. It's great coffee made by a great company, and you're going to get 20% off, but only when you go to blackoutcoffee.com/problem and use the promo code problem for 20% off your first order. Support your values, support freedom, and drink some great coffee while you're doing it. blackoutcoffee.com/problem. All right, let's get back into the show.
So the other thing that Rand says here, which I think is important for the Trump loyalists, is he likes to say, I support Trump. I just don't support raising the debt like this. And then I think it's worth playing the Ron Johnson clip because he talks about also coming in under the Tea Party. And he speaks a little bit more about not robbing from our future generations, which not enough people are talking about the fact that, you know, we're stealing from the grandkids here.
Yeah. All right. Let's play that. Let's play that clip. But yeah. Well, look, it's a pretty important point. And you know, isn't it interesting too how it's only through government that you even can do something like that? Like I can't. It's illegal for me to do that as a parent. I can't like max out credit cards in my daughter's name. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't just spend on present consumption and then saddle her with the debt. It's only through the mechanism of government that we can do this. But my God, if you ever, let's just say theoretically you could do that. It's just how monstrous.
It's for family household growth. It's if we lived in a nicer house now, she'll have a brighter future and earn more.
But then you cut, and it's just like I'm just driving like a Bugatti, and you're like, "Whoa, Dave, you bought this?" Or like, "Well, I put it on my daughter's credit card." Like when you immediately, you'd be like, "What a monster!" Like if somebody did this in their personal life, you'd think of it as like the most evil thing, and yet this is how our economic system maintains itself. It's truly crazy. All right, let's play this clip.
Well, we need to establish goals. Listen, this is the weekend we honor the service and sacrifice of the finest among us. You know, more than 1 million that died to defend this nation. I don't think they served and sacrificed to leave our children completely mortgaged, their future and their prospects diminished because of it. So we need to be responsible. The first goal of our budget reconciliation process should be to reduce the deficit. This actually increases it. But let me describe the mess. President Obama averaged about $910 billion of deficits per year. President Trump in his first 3 years averaged about 810. Then COVID hit, over $3 trillion in deficit. It should have ended there. We should have immediately returned to a pre-pandemic level spending, but President Biden averaged $1.9 trillion of deficits over his 4 years. And according to CBO, those deficits now average $2.2 trillion over the next 10 years. We'll add $22 trillion. And I'm sorry, the House bill would probably add, I've calculated $4 trillion. You're saying you have these independent analysts saying it's 3.3 to 4 trillion. I agree with that. We have to reduce the deficit. And so we need to focus on spending.
So
you don't defeat the deep state by funding it.
Right. So what changes are you going to push for in this bill when the Senate takes it up? You want to make $6 trillion in spending cuts over the next decade, you say. Just for comparison, that's the equivalent of almost the entire federal budget from last year. Here's where all that money went last year. We're just holding up a chart. You already know the percentages here of how much is going to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Pentagon, and on and on. Where would you make cuts?
But first of all, you take a different approach. You don't start at $7 trillion of completely unjustified level spending and then subject yourself to death by 1,000 cuts. You start with a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending. You've heard people talk about zero-based budgeting. I'm talking about a budget of 5.5 to 6.5 trillion. Those are options from Clinton, Obama, and Trump, where you just take their actual outlays, plus them up by population growth and inflation, leaving Social Security, Medicare, and interest untouched. That would leave you somewhere between 5.5 and $6.5 trillion. So you start there, but you have to do the work, and you need the time to do the work. I have to believe when you go through $7,000 billion of spending, if you go by it line by line, like DOGE has done, you will find hundreds of billions of dollars. And I've proven this in terms of where the spending occurs, hundreds of billions of dollars of.
It's amazing just how much the Overton window has shifted, that here you've got the guy who's the extremist on spending just going, let's go to the pre-pandemic levels. Like, listen, I know that we couldn't afford that. And I know back then I would have said, hey, we got to bring it down. But you guys have gotten so crazy. Listen, I won't touch your Medicaid. I won't touch your Social Security. I won't touch anything. In fact, I'll actually increase it relative to the inflation and population growth. But can we at least just halt it there? I mean, that's how much of a shift we've had from a conversation about, rolling back government spending, is that the most extreme position on the news of rolling back government spending is let's just go to the remember when it was the biggest emergency that ever happened in America? So we had to spend more money and we said we were only going to do it once because we're in this huge emergency. Can we at least honor what we said there and go to the before that loony levels? And that's the radical position. It's really, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy to watch that this is the extreme position.
It's wild too, because you see this all. Look, this is the entire story of the 20th century, and it's been the story of the 21st century as well. That it's always, this is why Michael Malice said, which I always loved this quote, thought it was one of the best quotes he's ever had, and there's a reason why it caught on so much. But he said, conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit. So it's just like you're still going in the same path. It's just they're kind of like, hey, let's just keep it at 65. You know what I mean? Like the old right, as Murray Rothbard called them, which was like Robert Taft and Garrett and people like this. They essentially rose up in opposition to the New Deal, which was, of course, FDR's economic plan. To get us out of the Great Depression, which if you go check the numbers, it did not get us out of the Great Depression. In fact, it's the reason why the Great Depression is remembered as the Great Depression. It's not, the Great Depression isn't remembered because the stock market crashed in 1929. In fact, there was a crash in 21 that was more severe than the one in 29. The crash, there's a great book on this. Have you ever read this, Rob? It's such a good book. It's called The Forgotten Crash. It's by Jim Grant. but it's all about the crash of 21. And essentially what happened was in 1921, a huge stock market crash. It was a bigger correction than the Great Depression and than the crash in 29. And essentially the government just didn't do anything. It just did nothing. The Federal Reserve had only been open for a few years. They weren't really even like up and running to the level that they were later. There was no government spending programs, no increase in regulations, and it was over. By a year later, the economy had completely recovered and it was over. Then cut to 29, the stock market crash. You have these huge government spending projects. And then in 32, FDR comes in and institutes the New Deal. And the unemployment was in double digits. I think it went up. It was at 25% at one point, well into the 30s, years and years and years later, and the problem was still happening. Anyway, so there were these they wouldn't call themselves conservatives, but what you might think of as conservatives at the time, who were opposed to the New Deal. However, Reagan, right? Now, this is decades later, obviously, but Ronald Reagan was an FDR Democrat who switched over and became a Republican because he was like, oh my God, the size and scope of government is getting too big. And yet none of them would ever, in the 60s, Lyndon Johnson had the Great Society, another, huge expansion of government. At the time, the people, the conservatives in the Republican Party would have said, we're against this. We're against these programs. We want to repeal these programs. But by the time they get back into power, all of a sudden, these are things you can never touch. No one could dream of touching Social Security. No one could dream of touching Medicare. Look, the Republicans ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare. Has anyone even mentioned that? Since the Republicans have all been in power, the idea of repealing Obamacare, none of them are even talking about doing that. And so you always have this thing where kind of like a new giant entitlement gets proposed. People, rail against it. They say, oh, this is going to be a disaster. The people who are for it are like, look, it's only going to cost this much. It'll be blah, blah, blah. It's going to be great. It ends up costing 7 times as much as they say, and it underdelivers on their promises. And then you get to a point where it's just codified. Well, that's part of, they call them entitlements, for God's sakes. Like that, it's just something you're entitled to. And so nobody can take it away from you now. And so this is where we keep going. But it is funny, as you point out, Rob, that the fiscal hawk here is saying, could we go to 5 years ago? Would that be possible? Could we get back to the levels that we were 5 years ago, which were substantially higher than Obama era levels of spending? Man, it is just pathetic.
By the way, I think Ron Johnson's one of the good guys. What other senator do you hear actually mentioning the deep state on the news or the fact that we're stealing from future generations? But it's just unbelievable that the guy who comes off as a fiscal conservative extremist is going, let's just go to even more spending than Obama, please.
Well, it's a sad state of affairs. It's like if you're like an abolitionist at the height of slavery, and there's one person up there who's like, maybe don't whip them so hard. And you're like, all right, how about that guy? Could we take up his proposal? That seems like a reasonable proposal, right? And they're like, this guy would free all the slaves. And you're like, he didn't even say that. He didn't even say it. He just said, don't hit him so hard. Is that possible? All right, listen, we got to wrap there. Apologize for the show being late today, but we will be back to our normal time at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Porchtour.com. Go check out Rob. Go follow him on the road. And of course, check out the Run Your Mouth podcast, Rob's other fantastic show. ComicDaveSmith.com for all of me and Rob's ticket links together. And of course, if you want to come out to the mothership in August, come on out, get the tickets now because those will all sell out. All right, catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.